This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Since he was 20 years old, Richard Peddie dreamed about being president of an NBA basketball team. In November of 1996, his dream became reality when he was offered the job of president of the Toronto Raptors. In 1998, the Toronto Maple Leafs bought the Raptors, and Richard became president and CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, or MLSE. Richard ran MLSE for 14 years, and for 6 of those years, I worked there as event accountant in the live entertainment department, or as we like to say, the E in MLSE. What I remember most about Richard was that he always seemed very approachable. He was always very appreciative of our work in live entertainment and probably the biggest fan of the company band, which I was lucky enough to be a part of for 6 years. I got to play on stage at the Air Canada Centre several times, and one time I even got to do a live performance with Alan Frew from the band Glass Tiger. I doubt that any of this would have happened if Richard didn't approve. Richard taught me the importance of having a vision and values in business, but also in the rest of your life as well. Knowing my core values helps me feel confident about big decisions that I make. And I believe it's important that when you're applying for a job, that you make sure that at least a few of your top values align with those of the company. Since retiring from MLSE, Richard has written 2 books. Dream Job is his autobiography and takes you through his journey in detail. 21 Leadership Lessons is his second book, and though at first you might think it's a book reserved for business leaders, after reading it, I realized how applicable these lessons are to everyone. I wanted to have Richard on the show because I believe his lessons about values, leadership, integrity, and yes, even thank you cards, are important for everyone to hear and can be applied to your personal life as well as your career. Today, at 71, Richard is a passionate city builder and philanthropist. He's active on Twitter, and he regularly writes posts on his website, forabettertoronto.ca. I feel very fortunate to know Richard and grateful that he agreed to host me in his home for this interview.
It was probably, as a young person, early teens. Literally, my brother and I started a little lawn cutting business. Mm-hmm. And by that, I meant we had about 4 customers, and we'd bicycle over to the person's house and we'd cut their lawn. I think if we did the trimming, it was $7. And if we didn't do trimming, it was like $5.
Because trimming is way more intricate, right?
Yeah. Well, it was extra work. It was more polish, I guess. And we did that. I unloaded box cars. I washed cars. One of my neighbors had all girls, so he didn't have a son. So I'd be his caddy. I'd wash his car.
Wait, box cars? So this is like trains?
Box cars, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And this is because
so
you're in Windsor.
This would be Windsor. And, one of my friends would call me up and there'd be 3 or 4 of us, and we unload a boxcar full of silica sand or God knows what, but it was dirty, and each bag probably weighed 20 pounds or something. Okay. Maybe more. You're pretty exhausted by the end of the day. And I'm doing stuff for my first paid job, real job, was $1 an hour.
Okay.
$1 an hour. And my check for 1 week prior to Christmas was an envelope with $52 in it.
Oh, nice.
And I joked that was the least amount of money I ever made per hour till I wrote a book.
Yeah, can you even measure the
well, no, you can't.
As an author?
My first book I got in advance from HarperCollins, and I got speaking gigs and stuff like that. In my second book, I self-published and covered the cost of an editor and printing and all that stuff. But no, I haven't even tried it. I think you talk to authors and they'd all tell you the same thing. It's not a great return on your money. But I didn't do it for money. I did it because I thought I had a story to tell.
Some people have these ideas when they're first, when they're young and they're writing about the ideas, but you can't really write a story about yourself until you've lived.
Naively, right? I can remember I was a brand manager in the 70s with the likes of Colgate and General Foods, and I thought I was kind of, to put it in the vernacular, hot shit. I thought I should write a book. Well, how naive is that? I think even then I realized it was naive. But later, as I got into my career, I really thought there was a book there, and that was one of the things I planned to do. And And finally, Dale Lastman, if you remember, he was on our board with Larry Tannenbaum, and he's the chair of Goodman's, a very fine law firm in Toronto. He finally says, well, are you going to do it or not? And I'll introduce you to Michael Levine, who works at the firm and who's arguably one of the best literary agents in Canada. And so I needed a push, but it was on my agenda. As I went through my career, it got closer on the horizon.
Well, not everybody can write. You might have a story to tell, and maybe you tell it around, but not everybody actually has the chops to just write it all down, or even tell a story, which is really what you were doing in your first book.
Well, there's a great author named Noel Tishy who thinks leaders should have values, ideas, energy, edge, and a teachable point of view.
Yes.
You know, I joke, I'm still in touch with one of my high school girlfriends.
Okay.
And Donna, and she's happily married in Windsor, but we joke she was an English major, taught English at high school. I was the guy who got C in English, and we laughed that I'm the one who's the best-selling author.
Well, yeah.
So
right?
Even my first book, I was smart enough to talk about business and doing the right thing. If you're going to write this book, get someone who's been there, done that. And I hired a fellow who had written 8 books, and I like to say I wrote 93,000 words, and he made them literate.
Well, maybe you've heard of this service I think it's in the States. I think it's called Book in a Box. And what they do is they would come to you, and you have all these ideas, but you don't have the time. Say you were still working.
Oh, really?
Right? If you were still working, you'd be like, I have all this stuff, and you kind of just like dictate all this stuff to them, and they put it all together for you.
Well, I meet all kinds of people who say, I'm going to write a book. And it's like anything in life, you have this objective, and many people never have enough energy and initiative to ever act on it. And so I hear that all the time. And they also very naively, once again, it's coming back to the finances, they don't know what's involved with it. It's you go to HarperCollins or any of the big publishing houses, and they'll want to, okay, what's your concept? Give us an idea of what's going to be your number of chapters, what's in them, who's your competitors, who's your target group, write a full chapter to see how good you are. So writing a book, unless you have the money to just go out and hire someone to help you, is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, Book in a Box, I don't think it's cheap. I think they might start at like 25
Actually, it's an interesting idea. I mean, they now do, dinners in a box where you get all the ingredients and you make them.
It's the same concept, right? Like Mentor in a box, you get a whole bunch of books sent to you, and actually people make specialty boxes. There's a whole company, I forget the name of it now, but they will put together, if you had a custom box, like if somebody's like, I want all the Richard Peddie things, here's a book Richard likes, here's a recipe with all of the ingredients for his favorite meal. Like, you could put together a box and just send it to your friends at Christmas. And it's a very unique
So what
idea.
you get now with a lot of authors, they, like Patterson, who's I used to like his early books. He has so many people working for him now. You wonder who's writing the book. And also, he's turning in a book like every 2 months. A good author can't do that.
Kind of like an executive chef, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they
I
don't
think you're
actually
right.
do the cooking.
I think that's really good.
Right? They have or like the CEO of a company, right? I mean, you're overseeing everything, but you're not actually writing all this stuff together, right?
Yeah.
So it's at a certain point, maybe Patterson or Stephen King, maybe they deserve these.
Stephen King, I just read his newest book. He teamed up with his son. So it was a great book. It was very Stephen King.
Yes.
But how much of his son was there? If it was, his son did a lot of it, he's going to probably have a nice career. Not as big as Stephen King, but he'll have a good career when his dad finally retires.
Well, he learned from the best.
Yeah.
So no money in books. It sounds like negative money to start anyway, right?
It's a love and it's a voice. And, so now after writing my second book, and I was with Ben McNally, who runs Ben McNally Books on Bay Street.
Okay,
and I was at an event last night at the library because I'm a big library supporter. And he said, are you going to write a third book? And I said, at Christmas time, I was thinking about it because I was thinking about writing a leadership book on urban leadership.
Yes.
And I was going to do it. If I'd run for mayor, I was going to come up with a book at the same time I announced my candidacy, but I passed on that. But yeah, it's not for everyone. And now what I do is I get my kicks from writing. I write, 1,000-word blog pretty much every week.
Yeah, I mean, the website's forabettertoronto.ca.
That's correct.
So forabettertoronto.ca, it's got basically, it's a book already.
It is. In fact, if I'd written a third book, I would have there were chapters on advocacy and vision and values. And I read that and I go, man, that's better stuff than I was writing 3 years ago.
A lot of bloggers will look at their site and say, I have a book already here and it just needs to be organized. And a lot of times people will just make a book like that has the same thing, just make a different version. I don't rule
out that, you never say never, because, I said after I wrote my first book, I was traveling from coast to coast giving speeches. And when someone meets an author, in addition to wanting an autograph from them, they don't know what to say to you. I love your book, blah, blah, blah. They'll say, are you going to write another book? And my answer was, no, one and done. I'm the Kentucky Wildcats. All these young kids play 1 year for Coach Cal and then go on to the pros. I'm one and done.
And you talk about that in your second book.
Yeah, and you
had to address that in your second book.
Yeah, because there I was saying that, but so you never say never.
Yeah, never say never. So back to the time when you did have money, $52. What did you do with that? What did you do with the money when it came in? Do you recall? You like put it in the same? I got a bank book.
I did have a bank book at TD.
Okay, yeah.
And I did that so I'd have money to buy Christmas presents.
Okay, so
it was like I put in $1 a week. I put in $1 a week.
Okay.
And I can remember the TD branch that I did that on. And actually I was a TD customer for a long time because of that. But I can remember that $52 check. I remember a shirt I bought. I think it started with a V, the brand name. And I bought that. I thought that was pretty cool. But I had no debts. So it's not like I'm paying off loans.
This was you're younger than a teenager?
Well, right now, my first job was about 18.
Yeah, okay. So
my dad basically said, you can cut lawns and wash cars, but once you turn 18, you get to have a real job. And that was a Christmas job. And then the summer, I started working at, the likes of Coca-Cola and stuff like that.
So when did you go to school? You went to the University of Windsor, right?
I went to, 65, I was 18 years old when I went to University of Windsor.
Okay, so, and how does one pay for school at that time?
At that time, my dad paid for it.
Okay, yeah.
A tuition was not even $500 and books weren't the crazy book prices they are today. Yeah. So I went, the monkey in that wrench, or whatever the expression is. I'm not even sure now. My dad died when I was 21.
Oh.
So I'm in second year business.
Oh, no.
Second year business.
While you're in university.
Yeah, while I was in university. My mom didn't work. And you really grow up quickly. So what I started doing, I got student loans.
Okay. Did they have OSAP or something like that program was established at the time?
I can't remember the acronym.
Something similar.
But
right?
I got a student loan because I sure qualified. No revenue in the house. And my mom went out and got she hadn't worked all through her marriage. She got a job. But now my brother Tom and I are on our own, basically financially. Mm-hmm. So I borrowed money and I worked for Air Canada. I worked for Air Canada in the summer at the airport as a passenger agent. And then in my final year of university, they brought me to Montreal to work in sales promotion at Place Ville-Marie. So I was doing that. I was doing part-time. So I was working in the wintertime as a sales agent for them. I was refereeing basketball games. I was doing stuff for money. And I graduated with probably about $1,200 worth of debt, far less than students today.
Oh, yeah.
And then I worked really hard and it goes back to my philosophy. Like, I didn't like debt.
Yeah.
So I just worked hard to eliminate that as fast as I could.
I think people who have that philosophy are actually quite lucky early in life, because if you don't like debt, you're going to pay it off. But if you don't have any opinion on debt, then, maybe you'll just spend, and then it kind of catches up to you.
It's a very siren call, isn't it? I mean, you can max out on credit card. My first credit card was a gas credit card. Basically, I graduated in 1970. I got a credit card. You know how they send them to graduates? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they still do, but they sure did.
They give them to you first year.
That's right. So I get that credit card, and I remember I filled up with a tank of gas in Guelph. I was visiting a good friend in Guelph, and I think it was like $6. I don't think I used the credit card again. And the moment I got it, I paid off the $6.
Yes.
And I don't think I ever used a credit card again. I was so adverse to debt. And so it was never a siren call for me. I'm not going to max out 3 cards. The biggest debt I had was on a house, and that was huge. But then I wanted to pay it off. So I was never, did I borrow? I probably would have borrowed for my first car. Probably. It was a Toyota Celica. It was about $33,000.
Well, these are the common things, right?
Yeah.
People borrow for a house and car.
But I was not, like if there was no credit check like you can do now. I'm sure my credit would have been excellent even then.
Do you have an idea of why you're so debt averse?
My family was a hardworking family. My dad was blue collar, grade 12 education. My mother was grade 9 education. We had a little post-war house in Windsor. We ate, liver and eggs and low cuts of meat.
My mom says ketchup sandwiches.
Well, we didn't go that low,
okay.
but a big lunch for me was hot dogs and beans. I loved hot dogs and beans.
It was just you and your brother?
Yeah, my sister.
And your sister.
My sister, and she moved out, when I was younger.
So you had 5 in the house at some point?
Yeah. And so I think they were frugal, and I don't really remember money being an issue. If money was an issue in my family, they kept it from us. But I know that I dated a gal in high school, and she lived in the Walk River, Windsor, and her dad was, worked for Chrysler's, and he wore a tie, and they were rich to me, and there was us. So I think that just whole appreciation for money, that being frugal, somehow seeped into me when I was a young child.
Debt means something to people, right? And if it doesn't mean something to you, then it's not a thing. So when somebody says, here's a credit card, you're like, okay, good, I can get what I want. You don't think about the consequences until they actually occur. And you're like, wow, I bought one thing and now it's doubled in interest.
Well, I see today, we eat out all the time. It's awful, especially in this neighborhood where I live. And there's so many good restaurants. I see young people. And man, I know what this dinner's costing me, and I'm seeing the drinks they're ordering and the steaks they're ordering. And I'm going, wow, I would love to know what I actually think about it. I would love to know what their credit cards look like. And I'll bet they're paying the minimum each month. And do they know what the interest rate is? And I don't know what the interest rate on credit cards are. They used to be like 28. Are they 18 or something?
They can go up as high as 28, probably a department store card. Right? An average would be probably about 19, 20. If you have a good one, maybe it's closer to 10. But still, any of those, they are compounding like crazy. And this is why I do this show, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're right. Some people don't even know. And here's why they don't know, because they think it doesn't matter. They're going to get the paycheck next week, and they're going to keep getting a paycheck.
Or win the lottery.
Which is what everyone seems to want.
I think it's the number one retirement savings strategy in Canada.
It's win the lottery, and number 2 is RRSPs. The truth is, and as you said a few times in podcasts, there is no job security.
Not today. More, especially for young people. When I graduated from the University of Windsor, there was 80 of us. And we're a typical bell curve. Even though it's an honors BCom program, there are stars in the class. There's like a bell curve. There's most of the people in the middle. But there were underperformers, and even though they graduated with the BCom, but we all got jobs. We all got pretty good jobs, and my starting salary was $8,300, and I was one of the highest paid because I had this Air Canada experience. There was probably some at $7,300, but they all got jobs. Today, I spend a lot of time at a university. They don't know if they're going to get a job. Colgate and Procter & Gamble came on campus to interview me. No one does that on a school like the University of Windsor. So it's tougher to find the jobs.
They don't have the job fairs anymore? Do they
well,
still
they
have
do,
job fairs?
but they're not the same.
They're not going with interviews. They're
had
like,
a job,
check us out.
This had a huge job fair, but it's still not the same. I mean, Procter & Gamble and Bell and stuff came right to campus, and all I had to do was show up and be prepared and interview. And now you have to chase it. So the jobs aren't out there. And if you do get a job, it's often on contract without the benefits. And then there's no certainty because companies are being bought and sold and merged and disrupted. And so these same people who are maxing out on credit cards don't have the job security I had. I mean, I worked for 41 years. I never got fired. I never got laid off in 41 years. Now, that's pretty rare today. My brother had an awesome career, but he got let go twice. And
so you think it's a lot of luck? Like some luck.
No, I think there's some luck to it. I was at the right place at the right time. I mean, I was interviewed on TSN one night, and after the interview, I heard the announcer say, "You know what? If a nuclear bomb goes off, I want to be standing beside Richard Peddie."
But it sounds like you put a lot of work in. Like, I mean, you talk about work-life balance and how millennials want work-life balance. Do you feel like you had work-life balance, especially like say the 70s, 80s, 90s when you're building this all up?
Well, the 70s, we think we worked hard. And actually, when you think about it, we didn't work hard at all.
Really?
No, not at all. Things were much easier. I mean, I sold Post cereals, and every year the cereal market in volume grew at 5% a year. And revenue grew up even faster because we passed on price increases of 3, 4, 5%.
Okay.
So you've got 10% coming in every year.
No matter what.
Almost no matter what.
No matter what you do.
And I sold products like Dream Whip and Tang and Jello, and it was the glory days of those businesses. And
you talk about Mad Men in the book. It's kind of like, and you said you were smoking a pipe?
I smoked a pipe, yeah.
Everyone is smoking in the.
Well,
what's it
we're
really
in the
like,
office.
Mad Men? Is that?
Well, no, because I wasn't on the advertising.
You weren't in an ad business.
No, I was, but you know, it was just a different time. It's much tougher now, and so work-life balance, I sure had it then. When I switched into my first presidency, which was hostess, I chose to be on the road a lot. It was a drugstore delivery business, trucks delivering potato chips to Max Milk.
They have to be
all over Canada.
Fresh was the thing, right?
I just thought things changed so quickly that I thought, because I didn't know the business when I first got promoted to that job, I figured I should be on the road. After that, I went to Pillsbury, but then I went to Skydome, and that job, being in the entertainment business, you know that you work all day and then you work at night.
That's it.
Your building is dark. You failed. And so you'd be there. I'd start the day at 8 o'clock, and I might not be out of there till 11. And then I went on to Maple Leaf Sports, and the same thing. I would do 100 to 150 events at night.
Sure.
I didn't do many concerts because you and Patty Ann had it so well controlled.
We took care of it. That's cool.
And I didn't have to. I went to where the problems were and the opportunities were, and Patty Ann was nailing the opportunities.
Well, that brings us to vision and values too. The thing I liked a lot. The thing that I always remember about the values, especially at MLSE, was you look at the values and they tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
Right? And you talk about this a lot in your books. But the Excite the Fans one, right?
Yes.
Because there's so much going on in an event with 20,000 people, or at the Skydome, more than that.
Yeah.
And someone can't be like, hey, Richard, what do I do? Or even, hey, director or manager, what do I do?
No, you got a good company empowers its employees.
Yeah.
And I remember, if an employee saw someone drop their popcorn, go get them a new popcorn. I used to say, excited every fan, everyone was empowered. The only thing I said was we only have 214 parking spots below Air Canada Centre. You cannot give away a parking spot. You're empowered to do pretty much all. You can comp a ticket. You can comp a meal. You can buy them a new pop. You can solve the problem. I'm not there to do. If our employees have the right values, and one of our values was to excite every fan, and another value was inspire our employees. Mm-hmm. One of the best ways to inspire them is to trust them, to empower them. That's why we did it.
I didn't realize this till I worked for the last 12 years, but values are important, personal values as well.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
So when you came up with the values, the vision is win, basically,
yes.
right?
Yep.
And I always got this wrong. I always used it. I said visions and values. I thought they were all one big lump thing, but I recognize now from reading your books that the vision was to win.
The vision is the what, and the values are how you're going to do it.
Okay. Yes.
And so, the win is on and off the playing field.
Yes. So win, which is expanded to on and off the playing field, because for me, who I was in live entertainment, a lot of the stuff that applied to the teams didn't really apply to me, right? So I was like, okay, the teams win, that's fine, but how does that apply to my job?
But you wanted to do 60 concerts a year.
That's right.
You wanted to be recognized. Instead of doing 2 shows, the person's going to want to do 3 shows at Air Canada Centre.
Yes.
You want the poll stars and stuff to recognize you. You want to hit your budget because everyone was on a bonus plan based on profits.
That's right.
And we had a lot of internal awards, Player of the Month and the All-Star team.
I just walked past today because I came into Union Station today, and I was like, I'm going to go look up at the board, and there's a CARE award now. I think it's a new one.
Yeah,
it's probably it's a community-based one, I'm guessing. Yeah, I mean,
one of our things was to be leaders in the community. That was our 4th value.
And the one I always forget, because it has to do with teams, is dedicated to our teams.
That's right. And that was building practice facilities and the best coaches and the best psychologists and the best food and all of that.
But that's about also building up the city too, right? It's like those ones, like you build things for the team, but really it's like you're making jobs, you're making would the practice facility be used as a community?
Well,
rink
we
as
built
well?
2 practice facilities. One was in conjunction with the Lions clubs out in, I think it was called Etobicoke. That was the MasterCard Center. They actually built it. We were prepared to build it, but the city wanted to do it themselves. And I said to the mayor, we'll do it cheaper and faster. And I was proven right. So that one we just contributed that we'll take a long-term lease on the thing.
Yeah,
so
okay.
you have certainty. And the very fact we were there attracted other people. The new Kia Center for football, that was entirely paid by Maple Leaf Sports.
So what my question would be, are your personal values always aligned, or were they always aligned with the values in your business? Was that important to you, or was it necessary?
Well, I think I'm a real student of leadership. And I learned I can tell you about 1983 that I really cottoned on to this vision and values stuff. And I don't think I ever thought about aligning them, but okay, so let's talk about Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. Inspire your people. Well, I'd realized very early in my career that people made the difference.
Yeah.
That, engaged, motivated, people that know what's going on, they're recognized, they're better employees. So that's easy. That aligns with my philosophy. Excite every fan. I realized, well, I was in marketing. You have to appeal to your customer. So that was very much part of my life.
The customer is always right.
Yeah.
Philosophy.
Dedicated to your teams. That's really product quality.
Yeah.
And so, I was always a quality person. And finally, be leaders in the community. I like to say that I really didn't wake up to the fact that I should be a leader in the community. Because, when I was, my first 3 or 4 presidents, well, I guess Skydome, I was sure in the community, but I never really thought of the role I could play and the company should play in the community. At Maple Leaf Sports, it was much different. Mm-hmm. We spent $1 billion and 95% of it was our own money, which is very not the way the NFL teams do it. They take this money from the cities and the states and stuff like that. And so we're doing all of this. We're bringing all these jobs, as you said earlier. People are coming and spending money. So the economic impact to the city is very positive. The awareness, when you bring an all-star game or a championship, the whole world is watching the city. And then we also had a foundation. And so it was there that I started realizing that I had a city building value. And now, obviously, that's where I've pivoted into that space since I left.
Yeah, well, I mean, I helped build a small rink or two, or
that's right,
refurbish things, and we even I remember we went to Tom and Selmy and said we should put on a boardroom superstar sort of competition where we get like bands from different companies to come and play an event. I think we ended up just doing it with our own people, but not only did we get to play for town hall meetings, of course, which you talk about in the book. Thanks for mentioning me indirectly in the book, both books twice, by the way. Thanks for that. Play to Win was, and I wasn't always in the band, of course, because it was started before I got there, but,
well, you came back from my retirement.
Well, and
played Coldplay songs.
Yes. And when they said, would you like to come back? I'm like, of course. This was something that not everybody gets to do. And, it leads me to a question I want to ask you, because you talk about thank you notes a lot.
I still do them.
Because you still do them.
Not as much.
Now, handwritten thank you notes.
Still bad handwriting, yes.
No, bad handwriting thank you notes, but you would say maybe you used to write like maybe an average of 3 a day. Easily, right? And that this made the difference in your career, and that it would make the difference if just a couple of people did it, if they're trying to get a job or promotion. Well,
I still speak constantly at universities, and I joke that I've told 10,000 university students that writing handwritten notes can break through the clutter and be the end difference why you got the job. And I also, so I'm standing up there in front of 300 at a time, 150 at a time. I tell them this. It's, as you remember, it's one of the lessons in my book. And I say that's the most analog lesson in my book. And I would tell them that. And then I say, and 1% of you will take me up on it. Because very few do.
It's true. I mean, I think maybe part of it is because everybody's going paperless, so people don't write much anymore.
Exactly.
But my question to you about that would be, could your thank you note concept be interpreted as just do something to stand out? Do something unique?
Well, that's part of it. Absolutely. Break through the clutter.
Like, could you just do like if you found something else, if thank you notes just aren't your thing, which seems to be the case for a lot of people. Yeah. Is that really the idea there?
Well, I think so. But honestly, I believe I had a vice president hostess who said, I don't need recognition. He was the one, he's since passed away. He was my best vice president. Wonderful guy. Stu Cairns. Loved him dearly and died way too young of cancer. And he said, I don't need recognition. He was older than me. He was kind of cranky operations guy. And I said, no, everybody wants recognition. So yeah, it breaks through the clutter. And I guess it breaks through the clutter because you're recognizing someone, you're thanking them. Mm-hmm. And now I'm not using it to get a job. You know, I had, a week ago, I had coffee with one of the city councilors, Anna Bailio. If she hears this, she knows I slaughtered this. And she's a wonderful counselor. And I had been at a meeting on affordable housing, and Anna was so impressive that I wrote her a note.
Yeah. And
then I had a medical at the Cleveland Clinic, and my doctor is Margaret Campbell, and she was awesome. So I wrote her a note. And so I have note paper now for if you remember at Maple Leaf Sports, it was all of our logos.
You had things made
right
at every company.
Yeah, at every company. At Hostess, it was our 3 little munchies, and at Skydome.
I remember the munchies.
Yeah, the roof opened and the fireworks were coming out. And now I have my wife Colleen drew a silhouette of the city, and on the back I've got the 4 values that I think are important for a livable city.
And what are those 4 values?
I believe a city needs to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. It needs to be healthy. It needs to be inspiring, and by that I mean libraries and arts and stuff. And it has to be inclusive for everyone, whether you're man, woman, old, young, gay, straight, person of color, not person of color, whatever religion, disabled, able-bodied. So those are my 4 values. And if you follow me on social media and my blogs and stuff, you know that I constantly come back to those values. And whatever city council is doing, I measure it against those 4 values. Can you hear that?
You know, noise to me, like I just did a podcast with Stephen Wayman from creditcardgenius.ca, and we just did it all walking around the path in Yorkville. You know, noise is subway.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. So we live downtown, and there's streetcars and cabs and honking and lots of construction, and we have neighbors who are always complaining about the noise. You live downtown.
That's, you know.
Go and live out in some pastoral farm.
That's it, right? We moved to Hamilton, and we're on a busy street because we wanted to be in, like, we're downtown people.
Same with me.
You know, at least for now. Who knows how that's going to change? But you know, and you got to accept that stuff. You got to accept the bus is going to go by. You got to accept that there's people, right?
It's the texture of the city. It's great.
You know, when I was working for the last 5 or 6 years at Live Nation, I started thinking about my values, and maybe I missed it, but Live Nation doesn't have a clear set of vision and values as MLSE did, or at least they weren't like.
If you're not clear on it, they probably did not.
That's it,
or at least they do. And I don't know Live Nation per se, but a lot of people create it. They put it in their annual report. They put a poster on the wall, and that's it.
That's it. And I realize that that's not good enough. I mean, especially after reading your books, you're probably right when you say, like, I don't know, probably everybody who's ever worked at MLSE, well, you were there anyway, would be able to recite at least 3 or all 4 of the values.
I'm still in contact with a lot of MLSE alumni and some of the people there. If you recall, I did a leadership course. Peddie was a graduate for my leadership course. And one of the things I asked him, and then I said, okay, take out a piece of paper and write down our vision and values.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everyone knew them. In fact, if you remember, we did an attitude survey every year or two, and we asked 2 questions. Do you know our vision and values? 92% said yes. Do you believe in them or follow them? And it was like 93% said yes. So, you know, I'm not saying it was perfect, but man, we, as you know, we built everything around vision and values.
Yeah, and you have to be aligned with them, and I realized that too, right? And so, you know, I started going. I went to career counseling, and I was like, you know, what are my core values, right?
Very good,
and I think
good exercise to go through.
Everyone
should do that
because, like you said in the book, people could go to a company and realize, I don't align with this, and this is why this is not the place for me. And you don't want to find that out when they get fired or just like feel like you don't belong.
You know, the only problem today is realistic. It's so tough getting jobs. Part of my pitch to university students is find out what the company values are and hopefully you align with them. And, you know, don't take them if they don't align with them. But if they've got a student debt of $30,000 and that's the only job they've got to do it. I said, but I predict you will have angst. You will have a disconnect that it won't be good for you.
Well, what tends to happen, which I found out, is maybe you have 10 values, and the most important ones, maybe one of them is met at a job. Maybe half of your overall values are met, and that's why you can stay there. And especially when you first start, right? You can be okay with that.
Yeah.
But you know, after 12 years of being in the music business, in live entertainment, I started to think more about what it is that I really want. And I was doing it in a certain way, but I wasn't really helping people in the way that I wanted. And I wanted to get more on the ground floor. I wanted to be more creative. Creativity was
innovation. Creativity can be a value of a company.
It can, and you know, you could argue I could have done all of this within Live Nation, but I had so many other things I wanted to do, and also a whole bunch of different things that didn't quite, you know, because a company is a company. You're doing one thing. You can maybe branch out a little bit, but if you have, like, personally, I have a lot of different skills. You know, musician. You know, I'm an Excel specialist, right? You know, bookkeeping and personal finance, and apparently I can do a podcast. You know, these all kind of. I was like, what could I do? And I'm like, I need to do this. I need to do my own thing. And the only downside to it is you lose that steady paycheck. You know, and then you try to make it up yourself.
So what I would say is you're right that maybe not all your values get fulfilled at a company. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're very creative and the company's that's not what they do. Really.
Well, somebody's deciding what you do.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But you fulfill it outside because you're in bands.
Yes.
Where the problem is if the company has bad values. If they're a toxic employer, they sexually harass, they cheat, they price fix, then now, if you're an honest person who doesn't believe in that, you've got a conflict. And, you know, Jon Stewart, the comedian, said, someone said, value's not a value until it costs you something. But what he says, if you're not following your values, they're just hobbies. So if you're a really honest person and believe in quality and fairness and whatever, and you're working for a place that cheats on their product quality, doesn't fill the bags quite as full, they're just racist, just the bosses all yell and whatever, and that's not you, there's where you go, boy, I need the paycheck. And then there's a slippery slope. We're just like, look what's happening in the United States right now. Trump's got all these horrible, horrible values.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in the Republican Party. I would never vote Republican, but there's a lot of people in the Republican Party that are compromising their values. They are. They're cowardly. They're letting this guy do all of the things that he's doing, and that's pretty bad.
Because it's not enough to speak out, right?
They're afraid to speak out. But also they got this guy in power, and he wields a very big stick. If you're not constantly bowing down to him, he'll get rid of you.
Like it takes a while to make that decision.
It does. And it's really easy for me to, you know, I like to think I live my values. I understand what my values are. Then, frankly, for 29 years, I got a chance to say what the values of the company were. So, like, why wouldn't I align them?
Of course.
But I never worked for a company that was toxic, that was awful. And if I was a young person with $30,000 of school debt or a house mortgage, or, you know, my wife just had a new baby, well, how good would I be on saying you can't work here because it doesn't align with my values?
Well, this is why I always recommend people have, you know, an emergency fund, but also what I like to call an FU fund.
Yeah.
So if you do have a toxic
Most
company or a toxic boss, you can say, F you, I'm going to go do my own thing. You can even take a break if you don't have, because sometimes, and I know the feeling, you just gotta go. You gotta go. And it's not necessarily because of any specific thing that anybody has done. It's just been building up for a while. I don't belong here. Something's telling me I don't belong here.
So the key to that is inertia, right? That's building up, and it's time to go. You know, you're being passed over. Maybe the place is fine, but it's not the place for you.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, it's
That was my case.
it's just
fine
not
place,
the,
but
yeah,
just not the place for me.
You know, they say that about 70-80% of the people who just choose to leave actually go to a better place. So it's that inertia that you're busy, you're working long hours, you get home to your family or whatever awaits you at home, and that's all consuming. And getting over that inertia to investigate, to do research, to make calls, to network, to go see a headhunter. A lot of people just stay in that job and they wake up 6 years later and they're still in the same rut they've been. But they've got the paycheck coming in. So it's easy for me to say that people should get over that inertia. I did. I mean, I plotted. I wanted to run a basketball team. So when the Skydome job came up, I went after it. You know, and then I did a lot of things to prepare for maybe someday running a sports team. So I made my moves. I never got fired. You know, I'd stay, but I was always figuring what I was going to do next.
Well, and did you build your FU fund or emergency fund early? So when you first, so I guess what would have been the first one? The looking for selling the Jell-O and
okay. So I left there in 1985, but a headhunter approached me. Do you run Pillsbury?
Okay.
And then, you know, once I got rid of my mortgage.
Yeah. Okay.
Once I got rid of my mortgage and I had no debt, I can't say I had a lot of money in the bank. And I think the stats are very few Canadians have that FU fund.
Well, how long did it take to pay the mortgage off? 10 years?
Probably not.
No, not.
Maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, okay.
My wife had a good job too.
Sure.
At the time. I was married to Trudy Egan at the time. And I was getting bonuses. My bonuses all went to the mortgage.
Yeah, so this is a good point. You took advantage. I had Sean Cooper, who wrote Burn Your Mortgage. He paid his mortgage off in 3 years. And he's
I probably did 5.
31, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know how old you were. How old would you have been?
I would have been probably early 40s.
He lived in the basement and rented out the top, which you probably...
Okay, I didn't go that far.
You probably could appreciate that, even if you wouldn't do it. He took advantage of all of the early payment options.
Yep.
And he actually...
I always did that.
He structured it so that he would have as many as possible.
Yeah, I
Lump
did that
sums
too.
all the way. So,
Yep.
so this is sort of the key. And then, so you had your house. Now you have a house. And you think that was the foundation?
Well, I think the fact that I didn't have, and I was pretty confident. I was already, when I left to go Skydome, I'd already been a president of 2 companies. I'm a young
that's
guy.
true.
I've got a track record. When I decided I was going to leave the consumer products industry, I was approached by 2 advertising agencies to be the president. I was actually negotiating at the same time to be president of CTV. A good friend of mine, John Cassidy, ultimately took that job because I took the Skydome job. So, you know what? It wasn't when I was jumping from that, it wasn't because I had FU money. I didn't have debt. My wife was making good money, and I knew that I was very employable. So what the hell?
Yeah,
I
but...
hadn't failed yet. If I'd failed yet, maybe I'd go, oh, God, the second one, do I dare fail again?
Well, that's it. But you'd be surprised. And this is famous for doctors, right? Making all the money, but it's all leveraged. Everything there's debt out, they're paying so many monthly payments in debt, even though the money's coming in, but where is it going? They got boats, they got planes, they got whatever.
Well, my financial advisor said to me one day, without giving away any secrets, said, Richard, you'd be amazed at how many people you see out there in Rosedale with the cottage up up north and driving a BMW and a whatever, and the kids are in private school. They are leveraged to the eyeballs. Mm-hmm. And it's never been me.
So because you have properties in various places, right?
Yep.
Maybe you built up a emergency fund at some point as you went along.
Well, what I did was I started getting a portfolio.
Okay.
I've had a financial advisor probably since about 1978.
Would you have put it in mutual funds at that time?
It wasn't as strategic. I can't remember. I did some stupid things. I got involved with a MERB. I think. Well,
I don't even know that term.
Yeah, it was.
Is it B for bond?
There. I got some film credits.
Okay, yeah, that was a Canadian thing.
I think. You know what?
Yeah.
There was very tactical, and ultimately I went away from the person because, and I really felt that they were on both sides of the street. They're making money on selling the MERB. It was multiple unit rental something or other.
Okay.
And I bought a MERB in Calgary. It was not a good investment. And I did the film thing. I did a couple of things. And it was boom, 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 boom. There was no strategy.
It was really a sales business more back then. And
they were
just
selling products.
Whatever,
making both sides of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I went with Burgundy. That was very conscious. I phoned around a lot of my CEO friends, and they like Burgundy. I'm still with Burgundy to this day. They're very, very well known. I'm not sure but they have a whack of not all of my money, but they have not even my biggest share of my money. But I've stuck with them, and they're a little more aggressive. And then 6 years ago, I did basically an RFP, and you were joking earlier, not everyone can do that. I did a request for a proposal to 4 firms, told them where Colleen and I were at, and tell me what you do. And you know one question I asked all of them? Tell me why you're not Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if I was to lose my wealth now, I'm 71 years old, there's no one's going to say, well, come back and be the president of the Raptors. That's not going to happen. I'm working even with my resume, I probably could consult and make okay money.
Yeah.
But I could be working at Starbucks. I could be a hell of a barista.
Well, generally, I don't know if that's exactly true for you, but it is a good lesson for people, because there are times in your life where you're going to be making money. Mm-hmm. And there are other times when you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you're relatively lucky, but there are people much younger than you. They run depending on what, you smoke for a little bit.
Bankruptcies in the U.S., I think some incredible percentage of bankruptcies in the U.S. are because of a major health problem.
Yes.
Because they have such a bad health system.
People think they're going to be great as they get older, right? And people think they're invincible, right? Yep. People don't get insurance. All of this stuff, it's easy. It's attainable. People don't put money away in savings when they have it, because they're not thinking of the future then. You
know what else? They're not seeing a doctor regularly, not seeing a dentist regularly. They're not seeing an eye doctor. Still, I saw an eye doctor yesterday. I see a dentist in a month. I had my executive medical 2 months ago. And, it's all of those things. You say, what has that got to do with a financial plan? Well, are you taking care of yourself? I try to work out every day.
Yeah, wellness, it includes financial wellness.
Yep.
So you got your mental health, you got your physical health, you got your finances. I'm sure I'm missing one. Mm-hmm. But they all work together, right? If you're eating out at McDonald's every day, you're probably shortening your life, but it's also costing you way more than it would to make a plate of pasta.
Yep.
And all you got to do is learn a couple of skills, right? It's very similar to business, right? You have the skills, you get paid for them. Well, if you just learn how to read instructions in a recipe, you can make a wonderful meal for yourself that would cost you. We were talking about how people are going, kids, in their 20s, are going to restaurants in Yorkville. About $100, $200 maybe if there's drinks.
I can't imagine what their credit cards look like.
And they could learn how to make pesto
this
themselves.
Is an area, the catchment area around is wealthy homes, and it's quite possible that their parents are paying for that. Now, the interesting thing is, they're saying this will be the first generation where the kids won't have it as good as their parents. And a lot of these kids will probably get the family home and maybe the family cottage, but maybe they've got 2 or 3 brothers and sisters, and all of a sudden they get 1/3 of it, and they really have no financial skills because someone's been paying all their credit cards. And I'm not saying that's the norm, but there are a bunch common. There's enough of them out there. And the point is that it sure looks like this generation, millennials, and I'm a big fan of millennials. I think the criticism is not warranted.
They only eat avocado toast.
It's a very normal distribution again. There's going to be stars, there's going to be dogs, and there's going to be a bunch in the middle.
It's true.
I had multiple job offers in 1970. They don't get that at school today. My debt was $1,200.
Yeah.
They're $30,000. I went to full-time jobs. There was no talk about you're on contract.
Yeah, everybody's starting on contract.
I got full benefits. All of those things for a great portion of the new population, the millennials, won't have that. Sure, there's going to be rich kids of rich parents who are going to be fine. But, the interesting thing, it better be fine because they may be picking up horrible life skills and no financial acumen at all because they never paid a credit card.
And social media is to blame for a little bit of this because you don't post a photo on Instagram of you eating a can of tuna,
or at McDonald's, unless it's a bunch of your buds and you're having a good time.
Yeah, and so everybody sees only the top-notch stuff, right? Oh, I went to Cancun this weekend and all that stuff, and they feel like they got to keep up. And there's people who have the frugality gene, I'll call it a gene because it feels like it's like something that's built into you or it's not. They're very lucky. I feel like they're lucky because they can resist all of this.
So there's an interesting ad that drives me crazy, and I don't know that these people, and they show it on the ad, these people have a card and they go buy on this card and they get money back. So they spend $1,000 and they get $100 back. And at the end of the year, they say, look what I made. This is the line. Look what I made.
Yeah.
Wait a second. What you got was you got money off of something like 10% off and you get a check back, but you still spent 90%. And it just drives me crazy. This woman is saying, look what I made. No, you didn't make that.
The similar, the comparison to that is all the free things you get when you open a bank account. You get free this, free that, free this, but you're paying $12, $13 a month. It's not free if you pay for it. I write blogs about this all the time because you're right. People are saying free. Well, you can get a free bank account, Tangerine, whatever PC Financial is called now. That's the free one. The one where you get free transfers or free debit transactions, but you're paying a monthly, it's not free.
Yeah, I think the financial lesson there is to really look at the whole table of what you're getting and what you're paying for. And I must admit, I have a silver credit card, American Express. I know it costs me something,
but you know that. That's a thing. You know how much the interest is going to be if you ever leave anything on there, but you actually probably have to pay it off every month. I think it's an Amex requirement. But it's what you don't know. Like if you want to pay fees, if you want 2.5% mutual funds, go ahead. If you know what that means, I just want to make sure everybody knows what it all means, right?
It's due diligence. When you go buy a company, you do your due diligence.
Exactly.
And frankly, if you're good, you do your due diligence on the job you're interviewing. Mm-hmm. If you're hiring someone, you do the due diligence on the person you're hiring. It's what is due diligence? It's the diligence you need to do to make the right decisions.
And so you have your famous quote, the gross is not the net.
Yes.
I never saw the sign that you would bring in because I think that was before my time. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just had it in your office.
I did. I ended up giving it to Ian Clark when I left.
Yes.
And he gave it to one of the guys in finance. Now, the interesting thing is, so I was at the library, the Central Library last night. I'm a huge fan of our library system. It's the best in the world. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a big fundraiser and I always buy tickets and my Colleen and I have a foundation and they are one of the recipients of money. I sponsor a youth hub in the Sandhurst Library down on Dundas and Bathurst. And so the young woman who is the president of the foundation, I had dinner with her on Friday night and we were talking about sponsorships and raising money. And I said, okay, so your ticket sales were how much? What was the net?
Yeah.
What were they? And so she said, oh, it's not great enough. So last night I went into my collection and I found a bobblehead. The bobblehead is gross. It's not the net. And I went to this reception to hear about this new fundraiser and I had a gift bag for her and she says, what's that? I goes, open it up. And I gave her a bobblehead and I said, you can teach your staff that the gross is not the net. And she laughed and now it'll be in her office.
Yeah. So just to fill everybody in. So when you retired, what was the year? Was it 13 or 14?
January 1st, 2012.
12. Oh, wow. I even jumped ahead. Okay. So 2012, just after I had left, actually, probably about 6 months is when your retirement party was. And there were hundreds. So how many hundreds of bobbleheads?
600.
600, because this is this thing that we would do for players, right?
Yes,
Players would have everybody. Hopefully, everybody knows what a bobblehead is. You just hit the thing, and the springy head goes. Well, not everybody has one. You can have one made of yourself if you go online.
Yeah.
But so Richard had the hundreds, and he's holding up a sign that says the gross is not the net. And so what that specifically means is that, like, let's just take your salary, for example, right? People talk about their gross salary all the time. I don't know why anybody ever talks about their gross salary. You never get to keep that.
Yeah.
Unless you get all your taxes back somehow.
Yeah.
And the CBP and EI.
Unless you're those fund holders, in the U.S. only pay 15% tax.
Okay.
I mean, we pay, close to 50%.
Sure.
People in Denmark pay 63%.
So why do we still quote?
That's an interesting point.
I mean, why do we still quote? Like, if I want to know how much I'm taking home. Now, of course, it differs. Maybe I have other side income, and maybe there's deductions.
You got stuff you're paying off.
I get that it's comparable, but it was the same argument for this is why we quote airline costs this way. Mm-hmm. But still, like, why wouldn't you tell me all the other costs I'm going to pay, whether it's comparable or not? I want to know.
And you want to know, but a lot of people don't do their due diligence. And there's a lack of financial literacy.
Yes.
And I graduated with a BCom. I took tax. I got an A in a tax course in my final year. I did my taxes for a while. Now I don't. I pay someone to do them. But that financial literacy.
And that's really what it comes down to. So people are surprised, like, if somebody says you're making $50,000, it's not $50,000. And so when you're doing your budget and you're like, oh, I make this much a month, it really doesn't come down to that. So in the business sense, people would come to you with, like, these are what our sales are, and this is what. But if your sales are $100 and your costs are $99, if you don't talk about the costs, there's a big difference between $1 and $100.
So I worked in the consumer products industry for 19 years, and we were really taught financial literacy. We had profit and loss statements for each of our brands. So if I was the brand manager of Jell-O, I knew what the sales were, and I knew what the product costs were, and I knew what administration costs were, and I knew what the marketing costs and sales costs were, and I got down to an operating profit. And then from that, you'd take your interest, depreciation, and amortization off that. So we knew all of that stuff. When I got to Maple Leaf Sports, I realized that our guys in, Dave Hopkinson's division in sponsorships and the people in merchandise sales and the people in food and beverage really didn't focus on margins. We focused on how much money we're making, but, the guys that come to me in sponsorships and say, or let's say, the price of beer goes up $6 a keg, and they say, well, we got to pass on $6 of cost. No, you have to put on more because you're protecting your dollar margin, but you're eroding your percentage margin. So I really started saying, when you show me that we've done a new sponsorship with Bell, show me how much else we're giving away t-shirts at a game. We're going to do something for their charity. I mean, there's cost to that. If we'd sell it for $1 million, we never netted $1 million. There were costs to it. And I wanted to make sure the guys knew what the costs were. So when they'd start showing me, here's our new deal with Bell, it was no longer just the gross. They had to show me the whole thing. And that, our profits really took, when people started focusing on the net, that our margins started going up in all three areas.
To take that to personal finance, it's like, not only do you start with your net salary, is that your net, now you gotta think about what your costs are for living. So if you say, okay, I make this much a month, but then you go get an apartment or a condo that costs more than that, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? So you have to think about, the two options if you don't have enough money are spend less, or make more money,
or go get a second job.
Side hustle. Yeah,
I'm a young brand manager at Colgate, and there's a young fella who was a year ahead of me. He went and bought a new yellow convertible. And he went into the boss and said, I've just bought a new convertible. It's cost me, I need a raise. No, that's not. So I still remember that. Like, I probably.
Good for him for trying.
I probably hadn't thought about ever doing that.
Yeah.
And if I had, I'd like to think I was smart enough to say, oh, that doesn't. I mean, that's the same thing. I'm a young person. My wife just had a baby. I should get paid more. No. No.
That's tough, right? Because and that's the reason you should have some money put aside. Family, life changes, health, as we talked about, everything changes your circumstance. So like the biggest lesson is just like take care in business. You never know where the ups and downs are going to be. So you want to keep some money, a contingency,
but
right?
I guess we've talked about this. I know you've stressed that, and I agree 100%. But I think the last time I read about it, and I know it's out there in the public domain, the great majority of people don't have enough in the bank to cover like 1 month's of expenses.
It's true.
Really high.
It's popular with millennials. People are relying on their lines of credit and credit cards, which is the worst because the worst thing you want to do is be like, I don't have a job and now I have to go into debt and now I don't even have income to service that debt. I don't see how that's an equivalent. People are like, I don't need an emergency fund. I got a line of credit. Yeah, the line of credit, which creates monthly payments and interest. So like that logic makes no sense to me.
It's good. I've got a line of credit. I may have used it to bridge a house or something like that.
In the short term.
I always had it, but I never wanted to use it. And you're right. It's not the long-term solution. It's just more debt.
It's all short term. I mean, I don't want to get into payday loans, but they're the worst.
Oh, they're the worst.
They're the worst. I've done a couple
Do the math on those.
Oh, it's 600% interest annually.
It's usurious. Is that the word? I think
it is. Well, they created the Payday Loan Act specifically so that people wouldn't refer to it as usurious. Yeah. But it's debt is. I don't know. People like to use it, but people need to realize that they're not invincible. And so, if you get into debt, you need to make sure that you understand that if something happens to you and you lose your income generating ability, that debt is still going to be there. If you are not in debt and you lose your job, all you have to do is worry about how to survive, not how to service a debt. So your dream was to own an NBA to run. So not own, because that takes tons of capital. That's the thing. But
mind you, when I first wrote that down, I think probably an NBA team was worth $10-12 million.
Okay,
and now it's worth $2 billion.
And it's a good story because it wasn't an overnight thing. This is like
29 years.
Yeah, 29 years.
So in the moment I wrote down that dream to realize it was 29 years.
And 96?
96, November 96.
November 96, you became president of the Raptors, which was then bought by MLSE, and then you became president of MLSE. And then all the other things. And so, you can read all about this. Dream Job is I think it's a great book. It's because it's a story. It's your story.
It's an autobiography.
And you have, maybe it's just the industries that you've been in, but you have lots of very interesting stories. I mean,
teachable point of view.
But you can read the book for all that. And then the second book, which wasn't supposed to happen, but did, which we might be saying about the third book.
I'm not saying that anymore because
I got it here. Yeah, exactly. I got 21 leadership lessons here. Yeah, no, exactly. Just leave it open. Leave it open for another one. But 21 leadership lessons is great because I think, as you say, maybe at the end, you can flip around and you don't have to read certain things in order, especially the things about
that's the beauty
the
of it.
book.
It's not a cover to cover. It's not like reading Stephen King.
Yeah.
You could open it up and read, lesson 7, lesson 12. I really aimed it at millennials because I heard the millennials ask me the same questions over and over again, other than whether I was going to write another book. And so I figured, and I'm a big fan of millennials again, that I said, maybe I've got a story. And, it's really interesting. I speak at universities all the time. And here I am standing in front of them. I'm the age of their grandparents. Yet I still have ability to resonate with them.
Yeah, you're not the typical grandparent.
I'd like to think that.
Because it's not long since you've retired, but you're not retired. This is not the
my brain's very active.
Retirement, exactly.
My learning, I'm about to sign up for in October, I took a 3-day course in Pittsburgh on climate change with Al Gore.
Yes,
so I did that and
heard about that on a podcast.
Yeah, in the end of February, I'm going to change my schedule to take attend a 3-day course on safe streets.
Okay.
Because I'm in, when I was thinking about running for mayor, I wanted to go to Copenhagen. I'm a huge fan of what they've done in Copenhagen. And I talked to the consul general and he said, what do you want to do when you're there? I said, boom, 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 boom. I said, I want to learn about Vision Zero, which is Safe Streets Initiative. And he said, oh, well, we do that, but you should go to Sweden because they're the ones who invested. Well, that's easy to say. I'm in Copenhagen. Well, Malmö, Sweden is across
Malmo's right there.
33
Yeah,
minutes
it's
away.
like next door.
And
Yeah.
the Vision Zero creator met me in Malmo to talk about Vision Zero. So now I'm a big fan of Vision Zero. We have Vision Zero here in Toronto. It's a complete charade. I mean, what do they say? A vision without action is a daydream. Action without a vision is a nightmare. And we're a daydream. And so they're going to be a 3-day course on Vision Zero. I'm going to spend $500 attending it. And people say, why do you want to do that? Because I'm still curious. I've still got a brain that's active as hell. And I'd like to make this city better.
Well, the way that I see it is you've taken all of your CEO energy and it's all transferred now into this city building, or making the city a better place. For bettertoronto.ca, it's all evident in
it all applies.
Like all of your tweets they're very educated comments, right? It's like you're holding the city to task, right?
Well, I marked the mayor, and I'm seeing John in March 5th. He invited me to come in and talk to him.
Okay.
I can't be his favorite guy. I mean, today, there's this whole thing on the Scarborough subway, and they're going to know the newest estimate of cost before the October 22nd election. But they're not going to make them public, and I disagree with that. That's a $3.4 billion cost. That's probably going to be $5 billion before they finish, and the mayor campaigned on that. So we need to know. We need to hold them accountable. We need transparency. So that was one of the things I did today. When I do social media, I have a friend who just passes me shit, and like a lot of it's empty calorie stuff. I'll send out a joke about puppies or comedy, or I'll do that. But when I tweet, even if I retweet something, I think about it and try to add value to it.
Sure.
I'll do a little bit of research. Even if it's only 12 words of research, I'll say, okay, do you know that the statistic on this is 63% of Canadians believe that? That's the kind of stuff I do. So my brain's still pretty wired.
You said John Tory, maybe you're not his favorite guy, but it's just like you and Robin Brudner. You might disagree, but that people need people to disagree or to challenge. You need a challenger.
So you remember Robin, and she could be a very challenging person, and what I said about her in my book was I asked Robin why she, as a subordinate, executive vice president, not a low level,
high level,
why she had the confidence of challenging me, and she said, because I know you'll listen to me.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that I have in my book is truth to power. It's the contrary thinking. And I think people have to hear that. And, the mayor is the mayor. But I'm a great believer that if that person, just as I was challenged by a board or by the fans of the Leafs or employees, that goes with the job. And I'm better for listening to that challenge.
Absolutely.
Better for it. And so, I give the mayor a few shots.
And
I did an interview here on CTV and about the same sitting arrangement we have, and the young one was interviewing. It was being filmed, and where I told him I was not going to run for mayor, and I said, listen, I understand the mayor's got a tough job, and I said, listen, when I was running Maple Leafs, everyone thought they could do the job better. And I'm sure everyone thinks they can do the job, or a lot of people think they can do your job better. Sure. I know that it's very tough. I don't know all the things that go with the job. The next day, John emailed me and thanked me for that. But that said, I still would say all those same things to you, to the mayor, but that doesn't give him a free pass. And he needs to hear contrary thinking.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
Yep.
So for bettertoronto.ca, and also you can find Richard on Twitter. Where else?
Well, I have an Instagram account that's not active. Sometimes I send stuff to Facebook, but really my website's pretty
active. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. And this was great, Richard.
Well, Bo, nice seeing you.
I'm very happy to know you, even though we didn't spend a lot of time working together.
I always felt that I knew you, though. I tried to know everyone's name at Maple Leaf Sports, and I don't know, maybe because you were part of the band, and I loved the entertainment group under Peddie and Tarleton. You guys did so well, and I didn't have to worry about you at all. And I joked that when we, that Peddie Ann put the E in Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. Yeah. And I thought it was a mistake when they revised the vision and values after I left. They dropped the E.
They did, eh?
They did, yeah. And no, it was important. It's an important part of the E. It's 60 concerts a year. It's probably 20 million net profit a year with food and beverage and everything. It's why suite holders often buy. Yes, they want to see the Raptors and the Leafs, but they want to see who,
Bon Jovi and
U2. All the ones that are coming through. Yeah. And there's a lot of, it was very important.
Well, we always felt valued by you.
Mm-hmm. Peddie was a great champion of it.
Well, thanks, Richard, and hopefully we can do this again.
Well, Bo, thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast.
If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, or whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. It would mean a lot to me, and it only takes a few seconds. For the show notes and any links from the episode, head over to my website, investwisely.ca. And while you're there, please feel free to send me a message on my contact page. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Personal Finance Show. I'll be back with a new episode next week featuring Megan Nobrega from Carrot Rewards.